I'd like to introduce Alison from England, who has fibromyalgia. Welcome, Alison.
Thank you.
Could you tell me when you first started to notice fibromyalgia symptoms?
I developed some kind of virus in November of late October 2009, after going out one evening, and over a matter of weeks, it was like flu-like symptoms for about 2 weeks where I could barely walk, and then the symptoms seemed to set in permanently after that. The sore throat and headache diminished, but the aches and pains in the groin and knees and wrists and neck particularly kind of set in and remained the same, and until I got to the point within about 4 or 5 months I was barely able to walk. I couldn't lift my right arm at all. I developed a frozen shoulder. I couldn't turn my neck above a couple of inches one way and not at all the other way. And I've not been able to kneel basically since, though obviously with LDN most of the other symptoms have diminished considerably and are under control.
So how old were you at the time?
49 just.
Mm-hmm. So how did that impact on your life, all these awful symptoms?
Well, I'm a single parent, so it was distressing to say the least, because my teenage daughter, who was in the last year of high school, was actually having to look after me. I didn't work for 3 months, and she was having to dress me and assist me to actually get up and down the stairs, and was helping to dress me predominantly. And I couldn't get in the bath without assistance, so I had to be reliant, which is quite undignified, on a teenager.
So how did that affect you?
Sorry?
How did that affect you psychologically?
Well, I suffer with bipolar disorder in any case, so she's had kind of a long history of dealing with that aspect of my health. So it's just an additional burden, but a really difficult time. So the guilt's obviously enormous in any case, suffering with depression, but then developing physical symptoms as well was soul-destroying, and a particularly bad time for her in the throes of her GCSEs.
Yes. And how did
having said that, since I've been on LDN, though the symptoms of fibromyalgia should actually make me feel psychologically infinitely worse, my bipolar has stayed relatively stable since I've been on LDN, which I thought was quite an astonishing aside, and obviously a positive one.
How did you hear about LDN?
I went to, when I was first diagnosed, I was obviously in denial, and I started reading up quite a bit about it. And on the NHS website, I read up quite a bit about fibromyalgia, and read a few anecdotes from other people suffering from it who were recommending, obviously, pain clinics and pain control. And one of the people recommended a doctor called Dr. Wright at West Horton, which ironically is a couple of miles from where I live. But bizarrely, I'd also met Dr. Wright when I presented myself at A&E in desperation a couple of months earlier, when my doctor was telling me there was nothing wrong with me and didn't want to give me anything because I was fabricating it. And Dr. Wright actually pointed me in the right direction. Without him, I wouldn't have had a diagnosis potentially for several years. But having got the diagnosis, because he pointed me in the right direction, I remembered his name. So when I actually saw it on the internet as a recommended pain clinic, that was my first port of call, and he was the doctor who suggested it was an option for me. And within a matter of weeks of that, I was on the LDN.
So when you first started LDN, what kind of results did you have? Did you have any side effects initially?
Only the quite lurid dreams, but I'm a very poor sleeper anyway, so the dreams weren't too disturbing. But I was obviously conscious with it currently being out of patent that I needed to be as well informed as I possibly could to protect myself from any potential side effects. So I had the presence of mind to ask my doctor to do kidney and liver analysis tests, all of which I'd had done prior to that for something else that was wrong with me. And since I've been on LDN, I've had them done again, and they've continued to improve. So for me, far from there being negative side effects, I've only had positive benefits from it. Mm-hmm. So, and I've also, at the time when I started taking it, I kind of weaned myself off tramadol, which I was on, because obviously with it being opiate based, I understood that it was like contraindicated. But over probably maybe 3 to 4 months on the drug, I started reducing gradually the other drugs that I was on, like Arthritic, because without Arthritic I couldn't walk and I couldn't bend my legs properly at all. But over the period of 3 or 4 months, I actually reduced to next to nothing. I was also taking amitriptyline because I couldn't sleep at night because of the pain, and clearly with the frozen shoulder I couldn't lie in specific positions either. But I've cut out everything now. I still do have minor flare-ups, but they're much less frequent and last less long. So occasionally I do resort to a couple of paracetamol, but I've probably not had an amitriptyline for 5 or 6 months. And I think I've only had one particularly bad day because I'm playing sports and stuff now, and I probably realise I'm overtaxing my muscles at times. But I've had one Arthritic in about 6 months. So I've gone from shed loads of drugs to nothing except LDN, the 4.5 milligrams a day.
If you had to rate your quality of life before you started LDN on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, what would it have been?
About 1 on, maybe 2 on a good day, and 0 to 1 on most of the other days.
And how would you rate it now?
I'd say on a really bad day, about 6, and on a good week, probably 8 to 9.
So that's quite amazing, isn't it?
That's astonishing. I mean, I can't rave about it enough. I tell everybody and anybody. I think they think I'm on some kind of commission now, but I just swear by it. And Dr. Wright's just a god to me. But for meeting him and being pointed in the direction of LDN, I dread to think what... I mean, I did have a blue badge last year at one point because I was so bad. I've surrendered it now because I'm confident enough. I kept it for a period of time, even though I was improving, because I kept thinking, discussing with other people how fibromyalgia impacts that. I could have relapses, and I thought I need to hedge my bets that I'm not necessarily getting better progressively, and I will stay that way. There's a potential that I could have a major relapse when the weather's... I mean, I've yet to see whether winter will cause significant problems. One of the big symptoms of fibromyalgia is cold intolerance, and though I still struggle to some extent with drafts, I can cope much better now with lower temperatures. And I was worried at one point about relinquishing the blue badge because I thought if winter has a worse, which it seems to do for most people, seems to be the worst time when it's cold and damper. But I seem to have managed so far, and I've been confident enough in how I'm progressing with LDN and how stable I've remained to relinquish the blue badge. So I'd say, apart from the fact I've actually got an incurable disorder, I'm in a position to lead as healthy and normal a life as probably most people my age without the condition. I'm playing competitive badminton again, and hockey and skiing. I was told I would never do anything again other than swim on my back if I was lucky.
And how long have you been taking LDN?
That May last year, a year and a couple of months. And I can't envisage life without it.
And as you were saying about bipolar, I've spoken to quite a few people who have bipolar, who take LDN, and they say that it really does help with their mood. Yeah.
Well, I don't have massive mood swings at all. In fact, I've just been recently subjected to being scammed, and everybody at work's been absolutely astonished that I've not fallen apart because of the massive mood swings that I had previously. And I've actually, despite the fact it's a pretty horrendous situation, I thought, well, to be fair, fibromyalgia, the onset of that was infinitely worse, and I need to rationalise it and be grateful for the state of health that I've got now and refuse to be knocked backwards and to stay with it, stick with it and move forward. So I do think it's massively impacting on the bipolar. And I've noticed as well, because I've had prickly heat for several years and hay fever, I haven't had any signs of either since I've been on LDN. So I think it's actually regulating that irregularity in the immune system as well.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say to other people if they were contemplating trying LDN or a little bit worried?
Well, I tell them to read as much as they possibly can, to read other people's stories, not just listen to mine, because I sound like some kind of evangelist. But I'm telling people it isn't a cure-all. It doesn't work for everybody, but for sure the difference in the quality of my life, I can only speak from my experience, and yet I've read and seen myself other people who've had the same radical impact, and I can only advocate it. I do recommend it to everybody. I've got the stickers in the car. Every available opportunity, if I can tell people about it, I do, because there's so many illnesses out there that people, it's not just for people with fibromyalgia. I mean, again, the bipolar, hay fever, there's so many other conditions. I mean, my father had Parkinson's disease, and if I'd have known that LDN existed then, he'd have been taking it for sure. He would have had the presence of mind to think it's worth a try, and the risks appear to be so low, and it's been used for such a long time in the States without any undue concern. It's good enough for me. It's good enough for Dr. Wrighton, it's good enough for all the other sufferers, it's good enough for me.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with us, Alison.
Absolutely. I'm glad.